film endure over time, right? Like that makes it get into the canon as a classic that generations are going to be watching over and over and over and over again.
I think it's just making a good film. Like if you look back over film history, when they do the lists of the 20 best romantic comedies of all time, they're really just listing 20 good films that happen to be romantic comedies. So it's like these are the best.
What makes them good, Lee?
But I think that I guess the frustrating answer is they just need to be good films. For me, my opinion is there's no formula for making a good horror film. You just need to make a good film, and if you happen to do that, it'll stand the test of time.
I disagree.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Respectfully or disrespectfully?
Very respectfully. I think what the films have in common is they're innovative. So I think what Paranormal Activity has, what Insidious has, what even The Visit, you know, and The Exorcist, they felt, Blair Witch felt that you were seeing something new. And what's very fun about what we all do, but also really challenging, is it's impossible to set out, I'm gonna make something that feels different than everything else. Like that's an impossible thing to do. That's why it happens so infrequently. But I think the movies that go directly to the canon, Get Out, feel like nothing or very little that has come before them. That's what I think makes movies timeless.
Even if they're not appreciated when they were made, because
yeah,
his cinema history is littered, like Citizen Kane, Blade Runner. For horror, I mean, John Carpenter's The Thing is the thing that comes to mind. I mean, that came out, what, 1982? 1982, right? I just have to look at Ryan.
Looks at Ryan.
This is the expert right here.
Ryan. And that movie came out like right after E.T., so everybody was really into, you know, cuddly aliens, and nobody wanted to see that shit on screen. And now that is an enduring, I mean, that is just such a celebrated piece of cinema now, and I think that's timelessness, is its ability to rise above the moment that it was made.
And there's no correlation, or often there's no correlation between box office and canon. So even movies or critics in canon, movies that at the time might not have made a lot of money or might not have done well critically, the fun, terrific thing about movies is that time is the great equalizer, and a great movie, even if it maybe didn't get good reviews or maybe even didn't do a lot of business, over time will start to get
To be super original, that's what'll push it out of it. I have like 2 pieces of advice that I give aspiring filmmakers. If I ever get asked that question of like, I'm really a horror fan, I want to get into the business or the industry, I want to be a filmmaker, I only have 2 pieces that I trot out, 2 pieces of advice. One is, for me now, technology has democratized filmmaking so much. Like when I was at film school in the mid-90s, filmmaking was prohibitively expensive. Like to buy film, even 16mm film, was really expensive. I mean, you had to save up thousands, and you know, it was just really hard. Whereas today, you can shoot a film on your iPhone, you can edit it on a laptop. Usually, so my first piece of advice is just go make something. You don't have to move to LA and sleep on someone's couch and go through this traditional. Why are you doing it the traditional way when you can actually make stuff now? Like in my era, you couldn't do that. You did have to go to the gatekeepers hat in hand and be like, please give me some money so I can shoot this script. Now you can just go and do it. And then the other piece of advice that I have is just make it original. And I wanted to throw this to you guys because I feel like the horror community is so great because there's so many really, really passionate horror fans. But fans sometimes make fan-driven movies. Like, I'm going to do my version of Night of the Living Dead. And I always want to say, no, that's been done. Like, that movie's already been made. Your little tribute to that isn't going, you know, unless it's Shaun of the Dead and you have some crazy angle, but try to come up with something no one's seen before. If you shoot that on a Canon 5D camera or whatever with your friend and edit it on your laptop and submit it to festivals and it's truly original, people will pick up on it. And you don't need movie stars. And unlike other genres, you don't need a lot of the side salad that other movies need. Jason was at a panel earlier talking about comedy, and he was saying it's a difficult genre because you really need Will Ferrell. The audience is like, well, I'm not going to see a comedy unless I'm guaranteed to laugh. Whereas horror's not like that. No one really cares. There was a Sundance movie, Hereditary. It's a new horror film. It's coming out mid-year. people in the horror community are really talking about it, and it's got nothing to do with Toni Collette. The reason they're talking about it is because it's supposed to be really scary, and it's supposed to be original. So I don't know, is this similar advice that you guys give to aspiring filmmakers, just about originality in the horror genre?
I mean, I'll say that I don't know that I'm in a position to give aspiring filmmakers any advice, but I do say that for myself. Try to make it as personal as possible. It doesn't mean that my movies are autobiographical.
He's right.
But I think it goes to this notion of innovation, which I might even say it's about vision. And vision comes from having a voice. And so as a filmmaker, it's a craft. You have to practice it. You have to find your voice. You have to hone it. And I think that I really connect with what you're saying, Lee. Like, you could reduce any genre into a formula and then just reproduce the formula and know, particularly in horror, there's going to be an audience. And there's comfort in the familiar. But I think that there's also so much to be had, particularly if you love horror, to keep trying to find, you know, what makes something new. And I think that the way, we all know that there's only like, what, 7 stories, and then we're all telling different variations of 7 stories. So then you gotta lean into the variation, and how do you find the variation?
Yeah, it's like, what's your little twist on it?
So
but I mean, if you graduated from film school yesterday, do you think you would go immediately out and try to make a film? Would you try to do it independently with your own, like get a friend and try to and do that? Yeah, I mean, I didn't go to film school, and so my film school was being on set and making things with my friends. And just learning that way, and then studying films and filmmakers. And so film school would have been amazing, but also there's also this benefit of not having gone to film school, where I feel like I'm constantly trying to put myself in a film school every day. And living in LA, you get the benefit of that to a certain degree. But for sure, I think there's just different ways to practice your craft. And however you do it, through film school or not, no matter what, you gotta make stuff. You just gotta you gotta keep, and you can make stuff these days because of technology. You couldn't really, like, in the 90s, you couldn't, I mean, did you go to film school, Stephen?
Yeah, we were at school at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
So
you went to the same school.
So no, which film school did you go to?
USC.
Okay, cool. And did you, I was on the other side of the world.
Yeah, you're on the other side of the world.
No one cares about.
This is a fun reunion because we had, when my first movie was made, was the same time his first movie was made. My friend was shooting a music video in a warehouse, and I went to go see it, and there were all these do not enter this area signs because there's this weird movie called Saw being shot here. And that was the first time I was exposed to you, and then my manager said, oh, I'm the one producing that movie. And then the night that my movie The Grudge came out, Lee and James Wan were there, and their movie came out. It was the weekend after?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, like we kind of had these weird movies that were very similar in that they were very low budget and they were really out of the box, and I think nobody really knew if anything was going to happen to them. But, you know, and kind of going back to what Lee said, the fact now that we don't need permission to get those tools anymore. Like you could go to that warehouse with your Canon 5D and you could make that movie.
Yeah, I feel like if I was growing up or coming up in this era, I would totally be leaning into that. Like, just like, let's grab even an iPhone. I mean, what do you think, Jason? Like, you're getting people all the time asking you, what's the best way to get into the industry? Would you say the same thing to?
Yeah, no, I agree. You can really, the best way to get better at making movies is to make them, not talk about them. That's what I always say. Same thing.
Yeah, film school for me, being of that era, was a lot of talking about it, and you were just kind of trying to get into the right class. They would let you actually touch a 35mm camera that maybe you could afford, and you were only going to be able to afford it for 2 days, so you didn't have any time to experiment with what you were doing. And now you can wake up, put your clothes on, walk out of your house, and start shooting with your iPhone and practice that craft.
And people do. I mean, people film their whole lives and put them on, Snapchat or whatever, and it's I think I remember that it was always this unicorn. You would hear about people who made a. Did you hear?
Why is
Steve made a film, and the question was always where to get the money. And I remember there was one kid at our film school who shot 35mm.
It works for the cops.
And no one could believe it. Like, how did he afford 35mm? And it was this I mean, you have no idea, it's such a debacle, like in film and how to do it, and now it's just so easy and so great. I mean, everyone in this room could walk out on the street right now with their phone and make a little short film. But anyway, more questions?
Yes, it is awesome that you can make a film, but it's also awesome that you can upload it to the internet. But with all of this content coming in, how do you stand out, or how do you market your film so that it gets recognized?
It's a really good question. As someone who has made a couple of things, you know, completely independently, including a feature, which